I've been wanting to do another video for a little while, and it's like I've started 10 different times and stopped. My problem right now is I've got a lot of hot topics to address that most people wind up getting offended with or about. See, when you try to point out how people have it wrong, and you're dealing with people who have been essentially taught to ignore anything that they don't want to deal with. I mean, think about it for a second. We, whether it's, alrighty then, whether it's within the home or not, society itself enforces and imposes a certain level of separation. There always has to be somebody or a group of somebodies to point your finger at. What we are failing to grasp as a society right now is everyone that we're pointing our fingers at in blame are people that this society created. We keep trying to eliminate problems. The problem with eliminating problems is you don't really know what the problem is. We're looking at surface value of what individual issues appear to be on the surface, making harsh judgments, and then brushing it off as if it's just another day. If you let yourself get worked up emotionally, then oh yeah, absolutely, it's absolutely the right thing. How dare these disgusting people do these disgusting things? Well, stop and think for a moment. Honestly, how many times have you seen somebody have to essentially face something despicable without any help, possibly while people are right there in the vicinity capable of possibly helping, while at the same time blatantly ignoring the situation? We as a society have been gaslighting ourselves. We want to feel secure, so we want to get rid of the criminal. We fail to question how we created the criminal to begin with. Society is the environment, so there is some culpability. If society creates the environment for criminals to multiply and then points the finger at all the criminals that are out there as the ones to be blamed, you're really not doing yourself any favor. That's not justice. That's vengeance. Right now, our entire justice system is about nothing but petty arguing, hate, fear. There's no justice. if you really believe that our current system even has the capacity for true justice, I I'm not sure I can even talk to you. I mean, if you're already convinced of that, that's you have fun. It sounds good. It isn't. The only thing society has actually done is take a big shit in their own backyard, paint a bunch of pretty pictures around it, and call it a reserve. And then when the garden stinks, they want to point their finger at the garden and say, get rid of it. Brilliant. Let's point our fingers at the ones that are less fortunate in any way, shape, or fashion. That way they can take the blame for all the ones that already have. People think it's done in money. No, the money's just a training process. If you hoard money, you get rewarded. Hoarding money devalues it. So this wise practice of saving money for the future, how well has that actually worked? The reason why it hasn't worked is because the money itself is being manipulated and has been for I don't even know how long. I would make a guess to say that since it started print. Way back in the old days. Wild West and all that great crap. We have, as a society, glorified piratism under the guise of aid, help, support, heroism. We're the thugs that are being sent in to wipe out entire populations and villages. For some excuse like, oh, let's take Bush's excuse and say weapons of mass destruction. Is anybody recognizing a theme in history? Because all of what I say can be verified if you just bother to look. You can also simply look at the things that would seem to disprove what I say. And therefore, I'm just some fool that's talking out the side of his neck. We'll put it that way. It's going to be funny when people recognize who the fool actually is. Everybody's been simply discounting everything that I say because I sound crazy, and quite frankly, I have to admit, in a lot of ways, I am. Especially in this world. But if you think what they call sanity is actually sanity, I feel sorry for you there too. That's partly why I've kind of gone crazy. Everybody's convinced of fallacies, and not a single one of them, none of them that are convinced of these things, have taken their own personal responsibility, a word that people use often and have no freaking clue what the heck it actually means. Oh yeah, I set some rat traps out there all set with the rat poison. We'll get them suckers. Yeah, along with how many other animals? Not exactly targeted, is it? Oh, but I was a smart guy. Oh yeah, I got a shit. And yet this crazy fucker is smarter than you. When people realize how much of a fool they've made of themselves by discounting me, I probably won't even be around. I mean, if I'm just going to guess, I probably won't even be around. I'd like to be. Not to be able to be there when everybody realizes how much of a fool they are, but because then we can get past it and finally get to where everybody wanted to be to begin with. I'm not here for me. Sure, I'd like to have some comfort, something that this world has done everything in its power to make sure I can't have, all the while making excuses as to why I failed and why it's all my fault. I'm sorry, you cannot participate in a system that you have not been properly trained to participate in. If you're going to play game, you need to know the rules. And so far, in America, there are no rules. Not really. And it's all supported by people who are proud to be an American because they didn't check the history of America, the blood that we have supported spilling. Even on our own soil. School shootings? You really think that came out of the blue? I mean, I think I heard about a few way back in the day when I was like 5 years old or whatever on the news, and it was sad and rarely heard of, and it was a shock to everybody, and blah, 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 blah. And then I told everybody exactly why and how it happened. Maybe not the details. No, I picked out the things that people weren't paying attention to. What was his home life like? What did the community treat that person like? How dismissive was society of a person that's supposed to be part of society? Because society doesn't really have the choice to pick and choose who is part of it. The people who are there are part of it. Figure it out. As soon as you start excluding, you actually cut your own limbs off. You're hurting yourself more than you know, more than the people that you're hurting, that you believe deserve to hurt, which, in a way, yes, they do. But if they do, so do you. Do you get it yet? You cannot support an action that you would not have done to you to begin with. That's just hypocrisy. And everybody's been trained in this way of thinking that excuses certain things. How's that going for you? Because now we have situations where things that shouldn't be excused are excused under the same supposed principle. Usually by people that have the money to be able to have the lawyers to be able to lie well enough to be able to get them out of court. It's all a game, all an illusion. From my standpoint, it's not a fun game. So far, everybody's made sure, absolutely certain, that I'm going to lose. Starting with my dad. Nobody paid attention. Even when I did try to figure some way of calling out for help from a position of a child who is essentially captured by their parent and has no way of informing anybody because he's the legal guardian and parent. Was he directly abusive? Oh, I could bring up a few instances where you could interpret the actions as abusive. I got spanked rather severely a couple of times. Honestly, I deserved it. I don't blame him for it. There were a few times where he spanked me where it wasn't called for, but he didn't know that. I don't exactly blame him for it not spanking me anyway. I do blame him for not paying attention and not questioning. I do blame him for insistently and persistently being ignorant. The most intelligent people out there are so tremendously ignorant. You can see it. You can see it in me. I'm not excluded from this, as far as I can tell, law of nature. Everybody's going to be ignorant of something. It's whether A, are you aware of it? And B, what do you do to recognize what you can't see better? Personal responsibility. Now you might be starting to get a picture on why I say nobody takes personal responsibility. Because personal responsibility, in all essence, is questioning yourself. And nobody wants to think about themselves questioning themselves. Oh no, well, that just, if you question yourself, you leave yourself open. You're doubting yourself. How can you say question yourself? Well, if you're not questioning yourself with judgment, then you learn something instead of simply doubting yourself. People use blind faith and call it faith. I try to be polite to people who I know actively do this because they don't recognize that they're doing this. The reason why they don't recognize is they've already essentially made amends with not questioning, because that's what everybody in their religion is telling them they should do. That's what everybody in society is telling them they should do. That's what everybody in business, in school, is telling them they should do. Don't question, do. Do or do not. There is no try. There's some truth to this. What people fail to recognize with a lot of these sayings is they're multifaceted. Nobody looks at the other side of the coin. Do or do not, there is no try. How is that correct? And how is it not? That gets pretty deep, doesn't it? Sometimes the simple fact that you did try, knowing that you're going to fail, and doing it anyway, sometimes that's the win. Not because you get what you want right then, because you planted a seed. You set the stage for something later on. You paved the way. You think you're going to be the only one stuck in that situation? What else can you learn from that situation? What other situations have you had like that you might have been on the other side of? If you can't think of any, how do you think it would feel being on the other side of it? Oh, I would never be there. If you're going to take that mind, don't even try thinking about it. You're going to be too dense. You're choosing to be. Everybody deals with all the same problems in a different way. All the same problems present themselves in different ways to different people. So, with all of these things that really are essentially organized processes all going on at once, you have chaos. Now, I'm not one exactly to believe in complete chaos. That said, I'm also one that doesn't believe in complete order. Neither can be complete. Too much of anything is a bad thing. There has to be a balance. We are essentially in a school. All of the sacred texts that I know about repeat more times than I could possibly count essentially the thought of ask and ye shall receive. Might take on different variations of phraseology, but it's essentially the same thought, the same concept. So, why have we been taught not to question? Oh, that's just a question for God. I guess we'll never know. There are some questions for God that we'll never know. The thing is, we don't have the capacity to recognize how to ask those questions. So, if you have some preacher, pastor, or uh, fiery heart missionary coming up to you saying anything about the usual religious stuff, maybe the first thing you should be asking is, do you accept God, the Creator, to be perfect? I mean, if God, the Creator, created everything, you know, personally, that is my belief. I also reserve the thought to think along terms of, if it's not the case, how would it look? Why? Because that's true knowledge. If you limit the knowledge too much, you create a illusion. A lot of individuals would call those logic loops. How does all that tie into growing structure? I don't know how many times I've said it. We live in a fractal universe. This means that it's a multiverse. Everything is within itself. So, if you looked at your yard right now, and maybe some of you take really good care of your yard, so I mean, you'll have to look elsewhere. But if you look in your yard right now, how well kept is that yard? Do you have like weeds growing along the fence, maybe trees growing through it because it's just too hard to pull out the root? Of course, that actually means that nobody's really tried to do it earlier. It was not that much of a concern. You had to let it get bigger for you to have more of a problem. People don't think of things like that. So, looking at the aspect of how many people have nice yards, let's just personally yourself think about, what do you think the percentage of people in the United States who live someplace have a nice yard? How organized is it? How disorganized? Is there a purpose for the things that are in the yard? Is it just clutter? All these things should be taken into consideration. Now, forget property value, because I tell you what, market property value right now is 100 times what it should be. My personal opinion. Do I have the facts to back that up? No. Do I have the facts to back up at least 50%? Abso-freaking-lutely. Though nobody wants to go look for the info on their own. Relatively easy thing to do. They expect me to try to do it for them, and then they get pissed off when I don't. I want the answers, then find them. That's your responsibility. You don't understand how dangerous it is for me to be talking about a lot of the things that I talk about. If I don't sound crazy, I would not be here. So the right people need to dig through the crap of my crazy to find the gold that's there. I guarantee you that it's there, but you're going to need to dig through a lot of my videos to do it. It's a fractal message. You'll get it once you get it. So if you're organizing all of this stuff that we're essentially overlooking now and turning it into stuff that you can use. I mean, right now in the yard that I'm in, there's several relatively tall plants and trees that are growing along the fence. Many of them that are over the top of the fence, which is, I'm going to say, about 4 feet tall. So, your average chain link fence, you know. And every time I look at something like that, and somebody else looks at that and says, "Oh, how terrible, that's a mess. We'll just need to get rid of the weeds," right? And that's the normal social reaction. That's what we're taught to think of it. But the reason why we've gotten to that point is because nobody has the time. I gotta work. I got things to do. I don't have time to just sit at home. Oh, how terrible. Where did that thinking come from? Because originally, staying at home is exactly what America was all about. You think the pioneers wanted to be out on the road? They were seeking safe shelter. Now, America has a plentiful supply of relatively safe shelter that has been hoarded by rich people, leaving them empty. for a majority of the time. Not all houses are like this, oh no, because in order to have a good market, you have to have something to sell. But you can't have too much to sell, or the market value won't go up. So, if the market value is actually going down, how do you change that trend? Well, that's obvious. You buy a bunch of property and sit on it, like a bunch of these large corporations are doing, many of them from China. Nobody's looking at that issue very much, are they? Some people know. I just shrug at it all. It's funny. People have no clue because they choose not to have a clue, and that's the saddest part. We are our own worst enemy because we choose to be proud to be an American instead of questioning why we're American. What was supposed to be the baseline principles of America? Aren't we supposed to have our independence? You can say we have our independence all you want. We have a lot of freedoms that a lot of countries don't have. That said, all those freedoms are manipulated. So we don't really have those freedoms. People don't even know half the time why they're doing the things they are doing. They think they know. Soldiers think they know why they're going across the ocean to go fight a battle that they have no business being in. None. Oh, we're fighting for the freedom of America. Are you? When you're out on that field, those actions that you take, do they really look like you're fighting for freedom? You need to start asking those questions because right now, you're accomplice to murder, theft, genocide. Because you're not questioning. Police, same thing. Do you really think that they're the good guys? Really, honestly think that they're the good guys? The law forces them to protect the people that need to be punished, and punishes overly much many people that should never have been punished. It's an imperfect system. Okay, great excuse. So, what the hell's the war on drugs all about? Are we really paying attention to our history? You cannot declare war on a substance or a plant. So the war is an excuse for the government to go into people's homes with lethal force if necessary and take what they want. Piracy, civil war, been going on for ages, right under our noses. We supported it because we thought we knew what was going on. You destroyed this country because you thought you knew what was going on. Start questioning. It can be corrected, but not with this government. The government needs to be outed, routed out. You're not going to do that by force. At least not force of arms. You will be able to do it by using the natural process. Why are we struggling so much? Because we have been trained to rely on a system that we are persistently and consistently told is an imperfect system as an excuse for the system not taking responsibility for itself. And how does the system keep people from recognizing this? They get people all hot and bothered about the crime that's going on in the street. It used to be that you could never convince somebody that crimes are committed solely on the base of drugs. Everybody used it. Cocaine? What do you think Coca Cola was? You're not going to get the original recipe anymore. We've been played. There's a safe way to use all these things. Eliminating drugs and calling them illegal made the situation worse, but they knew it would. Well, how did they know that it would? Because they already had a practice run on alcohol. Prohibition. What happened? What was the historical facts behind what actually happened with prohibition? It created an underbelly. It created a black market. You don't think that was taken into account when they declared war on drugs? What's the psychological impact that would have on America? It would be very confusing. People would be upset. Oh, how dare people do such terrible things to our country? Nobody paid attention to the fact it was the country doing it to them. But then we were trained to ignore things like that. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be oppressing the Native American peoples. And then you got a bunch of people from another country that want to sit there and run their mouths about how much they've been wronged. And a majority of the time, they don't realize that they would have been wronged even more if they'd been left in the country that they came from. But let's make it a big media display because, oh, well, our lives matter. Yeah, yours do. Hello. Doesn't mine matter somewhere? I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm trying to help everybody. But I still get a bunch of people turning their noses up at me because of my color. Spent 15 years on the street, haven't been able to get any real help from welfare, and all because essentially my color. Single white male. See how easy it is for you to go into welfare office and apply for food stamps when you're a single white male. They might tolerate it the first time, maybe the second time. The third time you're getting a little bit annoying and they're trying to figure out little legalities and little uh, strategies using their own rule books on how they can make it so that they don't have to deal with me anymore. Am I hurting anybody? No. I'm probably utilizing it better than a lot of the people they give it to. Do they care about that? No. They only care about their impression of what they think they know. Therefore, they're ignorant. And if you can't call somebody on their ignorance because they want to get butthurt every time, that's immaturity. When somebody can't stand to hear a specific word, that is either a form of trauma or a form of ignorant immaturity. I don't care what word it is. Now, I try to be careful with my words anyway. Not because I think I need to, but because I prefer to be respectful to people. But let me tell you something, a spade's a spade. It's not a good thing, not a bad thing. It is what it is. And the more that we focus on anything other than that, the more we become complicit to the very thing that a lot of people want to get all loud about themselves, essentially creating a form of racism that is reversed from what people normally think of. You're stealing, and you don't even recognize it. You've lied to yourself, and you have a picture in your mind, and it's hurting you and other people around you because you want to believe that certain groups of people aren't people. The more that we, as people, find reasons to exclude people from being people, the more we hurt ourselves. 42 minutes, I know I'm about to run out of memory space, so I'm going to have to cut it off here. Rising Angel signing off.